Well, hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church. This is a podcast where we invite you to ask the questions that you have about the deeper things in life: God, spirituality, meaning of life, existence, how it all translates through a Christian worldview, and how that compares and contrasts against other worldviews. We think that we're designed to be asking these questions. We think we live in a big, broad, bright, beautiful world that demands that we ask these questions, and we think it actually honors God to ask these questions. Sadly, way too often in the church today, people are afraid to ask their questions, don't know where to ask their questions, or feel judged because they ask their questions. That's not what we believe here. We think that God wants you asking the questions you have about Him, and the way we invite you to do it is simple. Text them into 815-314-0363. Again, that's 815-314-0363. We have got a huge inbox here that we like to work through, and that's what we're tackling today. August 3rd already, Andrew. My gosh. Crazy that we're already like August.
I know. I don't know how summer went that quickly. And I feel bad for like people who are in school and have the summer off, because it seems like it's flown by.
I know. It's like here in McHenry, Illinois, our neck of the woods. I think they're starting the 15th, if I'm not mistaken, maybe sooner.
So you're down to that
it's
2
under
week,
2 weeks, yeah.
2 week mark.
Yeah.
That's frightening.
Yeah, or it might be 2 weeks from today. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But
I know we're gearing up for, fall kickoffs and different groups and Wednesday nights and ministries all starting. So it's like, We're down to the wire.
Yeah. And some of you have been so patient with us. We have been working through a backlog of questions. My gosh, the inbox of questions. Guys, the questions you're asking are amazing. I mean, we have stuff on every topic imaginable from what appears to be simple but is often far more complex when you dig into it, to things that are logically thought out to 7 and 8 degrees. I saw that we have one email that came in today that's kind of quite the monster we're going to try to tackle, and stuff from the broad to the esoteric, to the simple to the crazy, and I mean that in the best way possible, to the deep and profound, to just, man, this has been bothering me. So we're going to jump right on in here today. By the way, my name's David Gadini, pastor at Fellowship of Faith in McHenry, Illinois, here in the studio with Andrew Metcalf, who is producing and doing technical direction and is the MC moderator extraordinaire. You rock this kind of...
Get to do a little bit of everything.
I know, right?
I know. I was talking to someone about when we were initially starting this podcast and doing it live.
Yeah. And
I was like, oh yeah, it was going to be great. I was going to be, back behind a desk, just pushing the buttons and everything. And we get here the first week and Kent's like, no, your seat's right there in the middle.
Yeah,
I was like, wait, what?
Okay, here we go.
Okay, great. Let's figure this out. So I think it's helped. It's brought me out of my shell a little bit. So,
all right. Well, you do a great job.
I still like to hide away in the booth on Sundays, though, at church.
Yeah, right.
Here it's nice because no one else is here.
Which is so funny to say, because like you lead worship at Fellowship of Faith, you drum repeatedly at Fellowship of Faith. I really expect that if you were brought into an OR, you can operate on someone. I mean, your talents seem unlimited. I used to do that for a few years. Then you go up and like, who is this guy?
A little bit of everything. I'd say, what is it? A jack of all trades, a master of none.
There you go.
I can figure everything out a little bit, but it's not going to be the best that you've ever seen.
Well, if that's your definition of being a jack of all trades and a master of none, well, you set the bar high on what a master has to be, because, geez, man, you nail it. So, what do we got here today? We got quite an assortment, I think, and let's see if we can get caught up a little bit with the questions people are asking.
Yeah, I like this first one a lot because I generally fall into this category. Is it okay for Christians to wear ripped jeans?
That's great. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we should be asking. Like, I was just going, yeah, of course. Maybe we should be asking where they're ripped.
That's true. Yeah. Is this a front to back seam rip? Is this?
And in what way are we talking about okay, too?
You might learn a little bit too much about your friends. You don't want that.
And there's certainly some things that, like, God is totally okay with that the rest of us are going, oh, please, no. Please, no. But yeah, it's totally okay to wear ripped jeans. And I'm going to just kind of assume that there's an implication here of, like, in church or something like that. God does not lay down what human decorum or what cultural standards need to be for all space and time. He leaves it to us to figure out. Mm-hmm. And it certainly has varied over the years and from culture and culture and time and place and place. I think Paul's advice to early Christians really holds best on this and 1,000 other things. Whatever you do, just do it in love towards other people. Mm-hmm. Like, is my attire causing distraction to other people? Is my attire causing other people to sin? because it's not modest enough or something like that, which is a real problem, even in the church today.
Yeah.
Is my attire in proper expression to God? And I don't even like terms like that because it makes it feel like I've got to be formal with God. No. I like to think about going to church like going to my grandma's house on Sundays. Growing up, I didn't get dressed up to go to grandma's house. You just went and you were yourself and you loved her. But would I wear something that I knew that was intentionally offensive to grandma to stick it to grandma? Well, maybe not either. If I was to go into another culture in another, region of this world, would I respect their norms and dress appropriately? Yeah, you bet, because I'm not looking to be a jerk.
Yeah.
It's not about asserting my independence. But fundamentally, yeah, you're at a church that likes rip jeans it up. Yeah. You're at a church that really it just kind of bothers people, we'll be sensitive to that and let the rest follow. But God's got no issue with it on principle.
Yeah, I think that was one thing. We were at a National Youth Gathering a few weeks back, and the last mass gathering was a worship service.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a cool juxtaposition between, all of the students and people, they're wearing T-shirts and gym shorts because they're in Texas and it's 100 degrees out. And then we also had, orchestra members that were, I think they were just in T-shirts as well.
Yeah,
but then you had pastors in full robes. Then you had the worship band. So it was so many different, levels of church vestiments. I don't know how to say it, but it all came together in just a really cool experience.
It worked. Yeah.
So I think it's a cool thing that so many different types and different expressions of worship were all able to coexist and allow people to join in that worship, which is cool.
Yeah. I had a seminary professor back in the 90s. His name was Jeff Gibbs. Great guy, since retired. Matthean scholar, meaning the Gospel of Matthew was like his specialty. And he was kind of like one of those guys that just, man, the love of the Lord oozed out of him. There was a kind of just a good reality of life in him. I mean, God was not a subject of study. Gotcha. As it can happen for many people in academic settings. Yeah. God was a real living part, and all of his study and work was led and directed towards just glory and devotion of God. But the best thing, remember this in college, the best thing was when people get on, your prof would get on a tangent. Right? And it was often in those side stories that made the bigger impact and that you learned more from. And I remember one time he was talking about when he was serving a church, and don't quote me, but I think it was in the Pacific Northwest. And talking about one Sunday, he was a pastor out there before he was doing the academic thing full time. And he was looking out at the landscape of the church, and they were doing communion, and he saw the ushers. And one usher was dressed from head to toe, kind of in the Sunday best suit. And then he looked at the other usher right across the aisle, who was wearing his, as he put his brand spanking new blue Levi jeans, and just some kind of golf shirt or button-down shirt, just something like that. And you had that kind of same contrast. And he said, I thought to myself in that moment, I did something right here. When it doesn't have to become about that, and people are just allowed to be who they are, come as they are, and love each other for who they are. Yeah, NYG kind of rocked that at that final service. Yeah,
and same with FOF. It's not uncommon to see someone just wearing onesie pajamas or
right,
a sweater with
that's interesting.
Santa on it or something So
yeah.
I think it's a culture that's going to be individual to your church and to your area.
Yeah.
But I think, like you said, it's there's no necessarily right or wrong for the specific article of clothing. There can be reasons behind it and other things like that, but it's not nope, you can't wear black socks.
Right.
You have to be white socks.
And we do need to be sensitive towards where other people are at, but I think too often in Christian history, at least recent Christian history, people have imposed a cultural norm on the Bible as what reverence looks like.
Yeah.
I don't even have a thought that ripped jeans are irreverent, and people would push back going, well, would you wear that to the president? Well, but no, I wouldn't. But I'm not going to visit the president. I'm going to visit my dad.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to imply irreverence. Just like dressing up can be for the wrong reasons too. It's a hard motive, but yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about it a little bit yesterday with even just hats and how that is
that's changed.
Can be or cannot be, because
right.
for a while everyone was wearing hats all the time, and then that was it changed to a disrespectful or not a reverence thing. So then no one was wearing them in church, and now it's come back in some ways, and in some ways not.
It's
so
just not seen as that
something
anymore.
that changes.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
We've got another one here. Is there anything in the Bible about the earth being round versus flat?
Good one. All right, I love it. No, not in the way that you're asking or thinking. I mean, obviously, we know that there are flat earth theorists or proponents today. And I think, for the most part, a lot of them do it just to get like attention or to be difficult for difficulty's sake or to make counterpoints. But there probably are some sincere, shall we say, aficionados of that school of thought, so to speak. And if anything is being done on biblical grounds to try to justify it, it is just a misinterpretation of the Bible. And let me illustrate how the Bible communicates and show you why people get this all wrong on both sides of the equation. Andrew, I'm going to ask you, is the earth flat or round?
Round.
Okay, but do you use a level?
Yes.
That would imply to me that it's flat.
Interesting.
It's both flat and round. It just depends on your perspective. You know, when an architect designs a building, they design it understanding that this pad and foundation is going to be flat and level. And it is flat and level. But that doesn't mean the globe is flat and level. It's just like saying, what color is the sun?
Yeah.
Go, well, yellow. Unless you're looking at it at sunset. And then you'd go, it's red. Unless you're looking at it from space. And then it's white.
Yeah.
So it just depends on your perspective. And it would be foolish to say that any of those answers is false or untrue. What color is the sky? Well, it's blue. I've seen pink skies. I've seen orange skies. I've seen black skies.
Yeah, in space it's all black. So
You know, no, I mean, even I've seen black skies from Earth at night.
yeah,
I
true.
mean,
Yeah.
So the Bible speaks in everyday human language, and it's not, when it's speaking, meaning to kind of make some, shall I say, absolute statement of reality, if you will, in some discipline that it is not talking about. So if it talks about the four corners of the earth, which the Bible does, it is not meaning to imply that the Bible is some kind of like, you know, quadrilateral, you know, shape like a rectangle or a square that actually has four corners. It's just a metaphor or figure of speech. And even if the author writing it at the time is assuming things about the universe or the world that aren't in fact as true as we would make claims about it today, it in no way diminishes or damages the point that they are trying to make by the metaphor. Everyone knows that when Jesus calls Herod a fox, that he's not implying that King Herod had four legs and a bushy tail. We shouldn't impose that on other descriptors or figurative language of the Bible or metaphors that the Bible uses, and that quite honestly we use today. I talk about the sunrise and the sun setting all the time, even though I know better.
Yeah.
The Bible does the same. It's not a
not
problem.
moving.
Yeah. So no, don't get hung up on that. And likewise, don't let people who like to tear the Bible apart because of its metaphorical use of language frighten you, scare you, or cast doubt on you either, because honestly, 20 seconds of reflection on this shows how ludicrous that kind of attack would be.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, great question. Great question.
Let's see. When I pray, how should I formally address God? As God, Lord, Yahweh, Abba, Father? Does God have a formal or preferred name?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I love this question. You know, any of those work and more. You can address God however you want, as long as you're doing it in a way that brings, shall we say, the proper respect or reverence to him, and that does not mean formality. Jesus, when he prayed, called God Abba. And Abba is an Aramaic word that most closely translates to English as daddy. There's intimacy in that. When Jesus' disciples came to him and said, Lord, teach us to pray, the way that he said, okay, pray like this, our Father. And what I think Jesus is implying there is not that that's the only way we should pray, but it's certainly the starting block from which we should pray. So how do you address God in that kind of relational language, with that kind of authority behind the language, with that kind of respect in the language that dad or father would indicate? And within that, God gives you a lot of freedom to address how you want. And sometimes there can be a lot of value in addressing God with different language or terms or titles that he uses. But there is something good about coming back to the source of Father repeatedly as well.
Yeah, as that's kind of just an anchor point.
It is, yeah.
In that.
You got it. Yeah.
We've got one specifically for you, Dave, here, I would say.
Okay.
As a child, I remember the minister coming to our house to visit.
Okay.
It was a large church, but he made it a point to connect with every family. It was a special time and memorable. Is it something that you would have time for?
Oh, great question. And yeah, in generations past where that was very much the MO of what a pastor did is he made house calls. The reality is pastors don't do it by and far today, not because of the busyness factor, though that is a key point. And I do believe this, and I don't think I'm just being blind. I do believe that those who are in pastoral ministry today are busier in many ways or expected to juggle more balls or do more than in previous generations. Certainly expected to have more expertise in more fields today. But the reality is we don't live in a day and age where people are home anymore. There also used to be a day and age when you had door-to-door salesmen. And it worked because it was assumed that someone would basically be home, often like, the housewife or something like that, in the middle of the day that you could drop in on. Well, today, if I was to drop in on someone, 9 times out of 10, they would not be home.
Yeah.
So the culture is shifted, which doesn't allow that. But the reality is this. Very few people invite me to come to their homes. Maybe because they don't want it to be a burden. Maybe because they just don't think about it. Maybe because, they don't want me there. Maybe because it's just kind of an out of sight, out of mind practice. But no, reach out to me. I'd love to come visit. And if you got some coffee or cookies available too, they rock on. That always sweetens the pot. But no, it's a great and wonderful practice. And if it's something that you would benefit from, would love to come visit.
I remember in grade school growing up, before every school year, before you started a new grade, at my school at least, the teacher for that grade would come to your house and do a house visit and sit down with you and your parent for 30 minutes or so to talk through, here's what you're going to expect from the classroom and stuff.
Right.
I don't believe the school I went to is still doing that. I don't know when that kind of phased out or changed, but it's again, people are busy and not home, and scheduling that is difficult. And I know, for our church, we have people coming from 45 minutes, an hour away. So I think that has changed a little bit with time too. Where
we're a commuter church, not a community.
Your local community church.
And something else too. We take this for granted, but even something which seems as antiquated as a phone message recording system, not even voicemail, but an answering machine. That didn't really exist before the 80s.
Yeah.
And so if you wanted to communicate with people, you kind of had to drop in or do it face-to-face or write a bunch of letters. Yeah. I mean, today with the ability to text, to FaceTime, to email, to post social media, to do, people have their phones on them and to leave messages and pick up immediately. I mean, it's changed the game as well, where it isn't even as necessitated. One final thing I would add, and I'm talking in the context of our church, but today there are churches of all sizes and varieties. And I think there's a far bigger disparity in the size of churches today than have historically existed. There's always been big churches and little churches, but now mega churches have become far more common.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a part of a church of more than 100 to 200 people, it's just not feasible for the pastor to be on, shall I say, beck and call at any moment, or visiting and maybe in that capacity to the way you'd like. It has to be by an invitational strategy.
Yeah.
I'll speak to FOF. We're not a large church by any stretch of the imagination, though we're not small by sociological definition in the States today. Average worship attendance for us is 200, and we got a very large live stream audience, but in person is 200. But our typical database of people that's drawing out of is about 600. Well, if I was to visit one person a day, every day, I would be in a 2-year rotation.
Yeah.
And so that somehow has necessitated how we do it as well, especially with longer driving distances and everything. But no, but I get it. I remember the kind of nostalgic era. I like the tail end of it myself, and there is something special to it. And so what I'd say is reach out to your pastor, whoever it is, if you'd like to do that, and invite him to coffee, invite him for dinner, invite his family over, invite him up to the cabin for the weekend. He 9 times out of 10 he would love to, and with enough work between the two of you, you'll find a time to make it happen.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that, just the changes in times and how people are living. And a couple weeks ago, I got a new battery in my cell phone.
Yeah.
And had to leave it at the store for a couple hours. And it was very strange. I was like, the first probably 15 minutes, I was just like freaking out, like, where's my phone?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They're working on it.
Yeah.
But it was also kind of nice. I was like, I know that no one can get a hold of me if they need to. Like, I don't have to worry about checking my email or someone texted me, I need to get back to them right away. Like,
yeah,
I'm like, that's kind of nice. So would you go back to that era of before your voicemail and all that stuff? Like,
it's easy to idealize.
Yeah, but then there's so many things I'm like, I can order food from my phone and it'll be delivered to me. Like,
as long as it doesn't become digital bondage or slavery, which it sadly does, or the addictive quality too, where it's like, I don't want to do anything, so I just kind of check my messages every 10 seconds. I check a new post. I check
Oh, it's absurd when they started sending out, of course, for whatever reason, Apple devices, they send out your like weekly screen usage and like your screen time. Everyone that I know of, it comes out on Sunday morning. So every Sunday morning, right around, I think it's like 9:30.
Yeah,
my phone will go off and be like, "Hey, you've been using your phone for 6 hours a day." I'm like, "Oh, shit.
Oh my god!
Do I need to confess about this
You're
now?"
right,
Like, this is just a weird time. Like, can we not do Mondays? Come on, like Sunday mornings, really?
Right.
Yeah, I think now is the time to tackle this email.
Okay, we've got an email.
Let's go after
here.
it. I'm gonna let you take charge on this because you know a lot more of the words that are in this email than I do.
All right, and Andrea, Andrew has forewarned me about this email, and not because there's something bad in it. Just it is long and dense with a lot of like if-then statements kind of going on, right?
Yeah.
So let me read this. Stay with us, folks, and let's tackle this. And I'll probably break it up into chunks as we go.
Yeah.
Just because I'm looking at the length of it right now, and oh my gosh! But honestly, whoever sent this, thank you for taking the time to really be this thoughtful about it, to think all this out. And here we go. I have been working my way through a book by an author named Michael Gorman called "Becoming the Gospel." And I'm finding his discussions and ideas regarding missional hermeneutics and the Missio Dei with regards to our participation and how we are to interpret the Bible very interesting. That alone needs unpacking already.
Yeah.
Missio Dei is the common theological phrase talking about the mission of God. What is God's mission for this world, and how does he go about carrying out his mission, and what's the theological frame of study around that?
Yeah.
And so missional hermeneutics is the art and science of interpreting a text. So if you're talking about biblical hermeneutics, you're going, how do I interpret the Bible? What's the right way, and what are the principles and techniques that you use to do it? Missional hermeneutics, then, would be interpreting the Bible from a missional vantage point or a missional perspective or starting point. Kind of put another way, it's to say that the entire Bible is a story about God's mission in this world. What is God's mission and how is he carrying it out? And we interpret all the Bible through those eyes.
Are there other eyes and lenses
You
that
bet.
people view hermeneutics?
Yeah. Like what is the best way to view the Bible as a whole and interpret its entire storyline as you're going through? And yes, there are other perspectives and fields of vision in this.
Gotcha.
Though the Missio Dei is a very big one and prominent one that has gotten a lot of traction that a lot of people espouse to. So
Okay.
I won't cloud it anymore
Yeah.
because of the length of the email with other perspectives, but let's run this one. Michael Gorman, seems to be stating that missional theology, doctrine, ministry, witness, and worldview is a part of the missional theme, Trinity, God's nature, God's kingdom, God's story, God's presence, creation. It seems that the theological norms, tradition, experience, scripture, and reason represent the missional theologian who live in the center of these themes. Okay, all statements so far. Here's the question. Do you think it is missional questions, issues, and problems to which the ancient authors sought to respond? And here's what I'm going to say right now before going further. Yes. Maybe this allows us to seek God's mission so we can interpret the Bible correctly. And only then we will ask the proper missional questions of the text. So yes, I do think you're on the right track. Yes, I do think this is a lens through which we should read the Bible. And yes, I do think that this central idea, or is a central idea, by which many of the other theological questions can be interpreted, but not exclusively.
Okay.
Because just like we talked in last week's episode, there are multiple themes and multiple streams in the Bible, and anytime you begin looking at it only through one lens, you risk minimizing other data and theological trajectories that are also there layered. Think of the Bible as strata, if you will. Multiple parallel layers and storylines that are in continuity with each other, but the one that you're looking at can run the risk of not seeing the others.
Yeah.
So the Missio Dei is definitely a key stream. It's definitely a key hermeneutic perspective, but not the only one. And so it's learning that alongside others. And that's always a danger we have when we have a favorite Bible passage.
I was going to say, even just picking out one verse instead of looking at the chapter or the verses surrounding it.
Yeah, or even a favorite book
Yeah.
of the Bible, and building our entire understanding around God around that and from that vantage point and forcing it to fit.
And even
Right?
as simple as, like, even just the story of Jesus, like, which gospel are you reading from? If you're
got
only
it.
ever reading Matthew,
got it.
you're only going to get one perspective
Yeah.
on it. So
And we have to do it. There's no getting around this. We have to start somewhere, and from there, get epiphany and inspiration by which we start understanding the whole. But we can't stop in then doing that in other places as well, and setting up these comparative
different silos,
models,
yeah.
if you will, and then figuring out how they connect. And that's what the task of theology is really all about, and why we continue going to church and writing and reading books and studying our Bibles regularly, because you don't figure it out on one verse.
yeah.
You can get enough in one verse. It's sufficient, if you will, for salvation. John 3:16 is enough to know
Yeah.
to be saved, but to go deeper into the mind
It's not
of
going to
God
tell you everything.
and
about God.
life with God. Yeah, you got it. So great question. And I think that more or less covers the essence of some of the comments to follow. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think that hits the main idea. I like that idea of what is the lens that you're using to read the Bible through?
Yeah.
Because that can be, good or bad in some ways. If you're looking for it to give you a specific answer that you want, that can cause some issues in that, I'm reading it with this intention for the outcome to be this way.
Yep.
But it can also be very helpful when I'm trying to find information on this one topic. Okay, well, that's going to be how I'm going to read the scripture to see what God is telling you about that topic. So
Yeah, you got it. You got it. So thank you for asking, and hopefully that has pointed you down some right directions and opened up some field of vision on others. That's going to feel good to delete like that. That's like major, that's major like
it's going to
mileage,
cut out a couple
and
pages out of our, 10-page document of questions. So,
right. And the rest are all just bullet point.
But sometimes I find that, sometimes those just one-line questions will have either the simplest or the most complex answer, and same with the paragraphs that are written. It just gives you a little bit more perspective into either the type of person asking the question or how in-depth they are going.
Yeah.
So.
And hey, Andrew, before we go any further, we're about halfway through the show today, and let me just take a moment, give a station break.
Yeah.
This is Questions You Never Thought You Could Ask in Church, the podcast where we invite you to ask the questions you have about God and spirituality, about different belief systems and worldviews, about Jesus Christ and what it means to be a follower of Him in the world today, and live in Him in relation to others in the world today. Any question goes on this show. You can text them into 815-314-0363. We want your questions. We appreciate your questions. We like your questions, and we think asking them rather than bearing them is good. So whether you believe in Christ, you doubt Christ, you want nothing to do with Christ, you think Christianity is the hope of the future, or you think it's the worst scathe on humanity and human history, if you are open for open dialogue, we would love to have your question, and we will deal with it as bluntly, honestly, straightforwardly, and transparently as we know how with our ability, and hopefully help you on the journey and keep a good conversation going. If you're listening through 21.6 The Net, Rock on. You can post your questions on Facebook. If you're listening live, though we are pre-recorded today, so don't do that today, but in future episodes. Likewise, join us at fellowshipoffaith.org. And go to FOF Plus. You can catch past episodes there or on your favorite podcast provider. Just search questions you never thought you could ask in church. You will be there. All right, there we go. What else we got here today, Andrew?
Yeah, so we have one asking about a future sermon series.
Okay.
Can you please do a sermon series on Revelation again pretty soon?
Yes, and this one came in June. This one was asked live.
Yeah,
when we were
right.
doing our live questions you never thought you could ask in church. The way we would do it live, guys, if you're listening today, is I'd invite people to bring their cell phones to church. We'd put a big number on the screen. They would be invited to ask any questions they wanted. I would get them anonymously and answer them in real time on the spot. Mm-hmm. And so someone asked this back in June, and I'm excited about this because what I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 weeks is kind of holding myself up. I put my email, out of the office thing on. I haven't been scheduling appointments, and people have been coming up, oh, you've been enjoying your vacation? No, it's not what I've been doing. I've basically been holding myself up, writing every single Bible study and sermon for the entire school year to come. And what we're doing, I'm so excited about this, is called The Last Apostle. Mm-hmm. And The Last Apostle is John. And what we're doing is looking at all the writings of John in the New Testament. In our worship service, the bulk of the sermons are going to be around the Gospel of John. In the spring, we're going to be looking at 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John. But what we're going to be doing in the 9 o'clock discipleship hour, or what we would call Bible study hour, is actually going through the book of Revelation. I've preached on it a couple of times in the past, but I think it works better in a teaching environment because you can open up dialogue and Q&A. It's interactive. You got it. It's a better medium for all the confusing symbolism and imagery and what's going on here. So starting September 11th, we are going to be doing Revelation for probably several months in that format.
You can't unpack that in one 40-minute Bible study?
Yeah, I can. Hang in there. One word. That's the message of Revelation. Hang in there.
Yeah.
Jesus wins. But I do want to say this. We put those, we have a podcast for those as well called The Bible in Context. Mm-hmm. And you can catch those on your podcast provider as well, but more easily, go to fellowshipoffaith.org, go to the FOF Plus page, and you'll find them right there. They're usually posted, Andrew, within 24 hours, maybe 48.
Yeah, usually Monday or Tuesday those are uploaded.
Yeah.
And we've had, this last school year you did prophets in context, so going through all the minor prophets.
Yeah.
Or minor and major.
Yeah. Yeah, touched on the major too.
And then we talked about Acts in context.
Yep.
We just had a couple on prayer recently. So,
right.
Yeah, there's a ton on there if you're looking for kind of that Bible study in-depth teaching.
Yeah, and maybe if this show seeks to give 30-second to 3-minute answers, that seeks to give 30 to 45-minute answers or discussions around certain topics, right?
Yeah, and the best part is you can listen to it at 1.5 speed if you really want to.
I cannot go back. That is the best thing YouTube ever did.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my gosh. To listen in real time anymore, or you go 0.75 and everyone sounds stoned,
If you just want to have some fun with it, that is an option for you.
Right.
But if you're listening live and if you're there in person, you cannot fast forward.
So yeah, that is coming. And we encourage you to tune in.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think that'll be good.
Hey, by the way, shout out to you too, Andrew. You did something pretty incredible with our sermon archive at Fellowship of Faith, where if you guys don't realize this, go on our messages webpage, again, fellowshipoffaith.org. And Andrew has set up a search engine where you can search not only chronologically, but also by topic. And if you want some of the past preaching on Revelation that we've done over the past years, you can find a wealth of resource there, or,
Yeah, so
YouTube
I think we've got about 40 or 50 different tags for topics. So there's just a list on the, I think it's message by topic page, and click on that and it'll give you basically every sermon from the history of what's been recorded and what's uploaded
because we're still
so
building
far.
the archive back in reverse
Shout out to
order.
Jess. She is going back years at a time and re-uploading sermons.
So I don't know if we're back to 1999 yet.
I don't think so.
I
I think we're in the mid-teens, maybe.
Mid-teens, okay.
Low teens. Yeah.
We're getting there. We're getting there.
We've made some progress. But
right.
if you want to either delve into a book of the Bible, or you have questions about creation or prayer or anything, there's so many different topics, just kind of grouping things together that way.
Yeah.
Which is very, very cool to do. that we're able to do that.
Yeah, you got it.
A short one here. Do you believe the world is experiencing the birthing pains right now?
Yeah, I do. Thank you for asking. What this is referring to is some metaphorical language that Paul especially will use, Jesus as well. But I think of like Romans 8, where he talks about how we can compare the struggle of life in the world now before Christ returns to set all things right as a woman in labor. It's hard. It's strenuous. It's filled with pain. It's hard to focus on what's to come because the agony of the present is overwhelming the joy of the future. And that we, as followers of God, but creation itself is not the way it's supposed to be. It too is tainted by sin, and it too is yearning for the way for God to come and redeem it. We always think about Jesus just coming to save us, but Jesus died for the world. And that's kind of a mind blow if you think about it, that what he did is not just for humans to go and be in heaven someday, but to redeem the entire cosmos.
Yeah, because creation has been impacted by sin as well.
Yeah.
It's not just humans.
You got it.
It's everything.
You got it. So yes, we are in the birth pangs and will continue to be in the birth pangs until Christ returns. And that is then metaphorically equated to delivery, when the pain is gone and in the past, and it is pure joy of what has come. Yeah.
And is that, I don't know if, I might be reading into this question too much, but I think sometimes when people are talking about that, it's in a reference to like the end times. Like, are we reaching the end of the birthing pains? Like, is this the culmination before the birth?
Like, are the
will,
contractions increasing, so to speak?
Well, and there's, so many different ways to think about that. If it's, the marks of the end times or trumpets or natural disasters, all these other things, it's like, I don't know if they were asking that, but I guess I'm asking that.
Yeah, it is a fantastic question, and it is a far more complex answer than most people will realize. There are basically three models by which Christianity has viewed the, quote, end times, or better put, the time between Christ's first and second coming that we live in today, right? And the three different models pose three different ways things are going to develop. And I want to go into terminology language, and I'm going to spare myself because it's going to open up more confusion. And I'm just going to say this. There is one school of thought who says it is going from bad to worse, that evil is increasing. And so it is getting darker and darker and darker, so to speak, as we approach closer and closer to when the day of Christ's return.
That almost sounds like we haven't hit rock bottom yet.
No.
Once you hit rock bottom, then Jesus will come back.
It's all trajectory, right? Yeah. There's another school of thought, and it's more of a minority school of thought, but it was more prominent in the 19th century, but it's not gone, that actually sees it opposite. It says it's getting better and better as the kingdom of God increases, that there is still evil and horror in this world, but fundamentally, we're going from darker to lighter, almost like, the dawn is coming in, right?
Yeah.
And there's things to merit that position. There is another school of thought who says, it's both.
That's a good Lutheran answer.
It is, and
it's
that
both
is
in, with, and under everything. Yeah.
And that is a Lutheran position.
Trinity 3 in 1, figure it out.
but not exclusively Lutheran.
Yeah.
Where it says both evil, or the kingdom of darkness, and good, or the kingdom of God and the kingdom of light, are both increasing at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's getting both better and worse simultaneously. There are theological terms for these, like what I would call amillennial, postmillennial, and premillennial, that open up a whole new field of vision, but that's fundamentally what they're about and how it relates to the end times coming. But I think it is the amillennial position. I do agree with I think both are increasing, Andrew, so that birth pangs are increasing, yet simultaneous, the kingdom of God is also advancing, and they can happen at the same time.
Yeah. And at any time can be that birthing moment. We don't know.
And we don't know.
We don't know the time or place. We don't know when it's going to
And that we know above all things, because Christ himself said that clearly.
Yeah.
No one knows the day or hour, not even the Son of Man. So if Jesus hasn't figured it out, how audacious and arrogant of us to think that we've decoded it and figured it out, right?
Don't worry. God emailed me.
Yeah.
We've got the data on lockdown.
Yeah.
I think one thing, like in talking about the end times thing, if you're watching this on video, you can see we have a new TV back here in the new studio, and I think that might be helpful to like get some graphics involved.
Let's do that.
Let's do some teaching in that way, because it is confusing when you're like amillennial. What are all these things?
Yeah. Let's make, if you don't mind, Andrew,
I
let's
feel like
make
I'm
a
making
note.
more work for myself, but
No, but but the joy is we've taught on this at Fellowship of Faith. I mean, I have 3 or 4 graphics right now that I could just pull up and go, look at this chart, meditate on it for 2 minutes, and all your answers will be, given. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out to 216 The Net. I am loving the new studio.
Oh,
They did
yeah,
the studio
absolutely.
rehab. Many of you are listening and don't see it, but if you watch us on Facebook, this is just incredible. This new space, and I guess they said they're not even done yet. So
yeah, I think
Loving
work
it.
in progress continuing.
yeah,
which is great.
absolutely loving it.
Okay, we've got one here about kind of relating to the Bible.
Okay.
What do you recommend for someone that is struggling to connect with the Bible and faith, specifically as it pertains to resources that help connect the Bible to historical events? I want to believe and grow my faith, but I struggle with it seeming like, air quotes, blind faith based on stories that don't seem to have supporting evidence. It says, sincerely, not wanting to be a skeptic.
I love it.
I like that.
I love it. Oh, brother or sister, whoever asked this, thank you. This kind of question is exactly why I'm so passionate about this show. And I'm so grateful that you asked, because let me tell you this, you are not alone. So many people struggle with this. And so many people who have been sitting in church chairs or pews for 40 years secretly struggle with this inside and are afraid to admit it. And so what do I recommend? 2 things. 1, keep reading the Bible. Keep reading it on a very regular basis. I would say daily, but it doesn't have to be daily. Just read it regularly so that you are knowing the stories better and better and are building more and more familiarity with it. Because without knowing that, you don't have a source, right? But what I would then encourage you to do is supplement it with any number of incredible resources out there that do exactly what you're asking for. There is a wealth of video, of audio, and literature that seeks to do exactly this. And my gosh, depending on your area of interest, it's almost a paralysis by options that are out there.
Yeah.
I am going to paralyze you with some options off the bat, but just because I want to give you a big field of vision, and then I'm going to maybe make a couple of specific recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay, go to our website, fellowshipoffaith.org. On our website, go to a page called Faith Training. And on the Faith Training page, you are going to find links to several resources. Right Now Media, YouVersion, and the Bible Project. 3 incredible just archives of thousands upon thousands of explanatory teachings and video footage and reading plans and things that you can tap. And through that, you can just start to explore in a very winsome way with a very easy search engine. And you can get lost in there for the better part of your life, and you will not be the worse for it.
Yeah.
Start there and start searching in the engine for things like historic reliability, for archaeological evidence. Maybe it's just phrases like, is this real? How can I know that the gospel is true? You are going to get so many things that pop up that are going to help you. Oh my gosh. And you'll even get daily Bible reading plans, especially through YouVersion.
Yeah.
But also through Bible Project that can help you stay on a certain pace along the
and
way.
I absolutely know on Right Now Media, there's Bible studies where, whoever the subject is in the video they're talking about, they're standing inside of the temple. Over in the Middle East. They're like, this is where this happened.
Right.
This is where this happened. So those are always really impactful for me. But they're like, I'm standing in the Nile River. Jesus was baptized here. Like,
it's
so
amazing.
It's so cool to see that and to not have to travel there yourself and do that. You can do that through Right Now Media.
You got it.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And now, just so that there isn't a paralysis by option, I am going to make, I was going to say 2, I'm going to give 3 recommendations. The first is a series of teachings by a man named Ray Vanderlaan called That the World May Know. I believe you can access them through a website called followtherabbi.com, but honestly, if you just Google Ray Vanderlaan or That the World May Know, They're a little bit older now. He actually originally released them on VHS and then went to DVD. They might be live streamed for pay.
Yeah.
And they might be on some of those sources I meant. But he is a Christian theologian who comes at the biblical text from a Jewish perspective. He's not Jewish, he's Dutch with a name like Vanderland.
Yeah.
But his family had history, even in World War II, I think in the Netherlands, of harboring Jews under the Nazi regime.
Yeah.
And he actually studied in Jewish yeshivas, which are basically Jewish seminaries under rabbis, and so brings this synthesis of the historic, cultural Jewish mindset in Jesus' era alongside the biblical text, and leads tours in this video series called That the World May Know exactly to what you're doing. Here we are at the Pool of Bethsaida. Here we are at the Sea of Galilee. Here we are in Jerusalem. And he brings the text to life in a way that's been enriching to me. Check him out.
Yeah.
Number 2, check out an author called Lee Strobel. There is a field called apologetics, which means giving reasoned defenses or explanations for the Christian faith. And there's a field of authors out there since, honestly, the earliest church in the 2nd century. But Lee Strobel I find to be a modern one who's very popular and very accessible. He was I believe, a crime reporter, but he was an investigative reporter for the Chicago Tribune, and he was an agnostic, if not atheist. And his wife became a Christian, and it scared him to death because he thought he was going to lose his wife to this craziness. And he went about trying to disprove Christianity, and it actually convinced him, and he became one of the most outspoken Christians and prolific Christian authors of our recent day and age on reasoned evidence for the Christian faith. Check him out. The Case for Christ is kind of his classic work. The Case for Faith is another one, but he's written tons of stuff. He's a good guy to swim through.
Yeah.
Finally, I'll give one more. A little bit older. His name is Josh McDowell. And he wrote a simple little book called More Than a Carpenter. He's also written books like Evidence That Demand a Verdict and some others as well. I bring him up simply because More Than a Carpenter is such a short, easy read. It's like 80 pages. You can buy it for $4 and read it in under an hour.
Yeah.
That it doesn't overwhelm from the outset. So just some avenues to get you going. And I do find that I want to encourage you. You said sincerely not wanting to be a skeptic. This is where I think you are going to find where Jesus says, seek and you will find, ask and you will receive, knock and the door will be open. If you sincerely go down this quest, sincerely looking for the answers, if you are patient, you are going to find them. And your faith is going to be so bolstered, and you are going to move into such a place of strength over doubt, if I can put it that way, that it's going to blow your mind. Hang in there. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, one thing that's been helpful for me specifically is in YouVersion, they have, thousands and thousands of Bible plans. But finding, one person, a couple people, a group of people to do a Bible plan with is very cool because they provide a discussion page after every reading. Typically there's like a Devo beforehand, then there's whatever the reading is. Sometimes it's one verse, sometimes it's a whole chapter.
Yeah.
But then there's this discussion page. And so you can communicate with whoever you're doing this plan with them. Hey, I have a question here, or this is my thoughts about it. So, typically that was reserved for, when we're all in person, we're doing a Bible study every Monday or whatever. Now it can happen daily with whoever you're doing this plan with. So that's been really cool for me to grow in my faith with other people at our church.
No, and thanks for bringing that up, Andrew. And and I'll even make this offer to anyone listening here today. Make a friend request to me on YouVersion. My name is David Gadini. It is not a common name, so you will find me quickly, all right? Last name is spelled Gaddini, pronounced Gadini, think Houdini, but Ga, all right? Make a friend request, and then I'll friend you, and you can see exactly what I'm reading in YouVersion. I just finished one up on Faith and Doubt by a series called The 1 Minute Apologist, which you can get on YouTube. It was great, and a lot of these are springboards that then take you deeper with other literature that they've written. Os Guinness just has a book that they're pushing. I think it's called like Secrets in the Dark or God in the Dark or something like that. But anyway, I can paralyze you with options now.
Yeah, and another thing that's been helpful in there too, because I'm one who's fairly familiar with the Bible. I've read a lot of it.
Yeah, grew up in it.
It's easy. I love the NIV. That's
Same
like
here.
my
go-to.
version. That's the one I go to all the time. But what I'm doing, I'm going through Psalms with someone, a Psalms plan, and we're doing it in the Message or a different translation.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, man.
I can read
Amazing.
through a psalm that I've read 20 times.
Amazing.
And you go, I don't know, I've heard this a bunch. But jumping into a new version that you're not familiar with just gives you a new perspective of it and makes the material fresh again for you.
It does. And it's just like, and then you go back and read the original and it's like, oh, it's right there.
Yeah,
It's just,
you're like, oh, now I see it. But how was I
missed
missing
that,
it?
you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, like you said, I think asking the question is the first step in that, because that shows an interest in it, and you're wanting to commit to growing this and to figuring it out. So I think that's the best starting point.
You got
Here's one that I like. I feel like it gets asked every couple months.
Okay.
But it's always
Okay.
a good refresh, I think.
Yeah.
Should we believe everything that you're saying in this series or this podcast, or should we think of what you're saying as your opinion?
Oh, I love this. Thank you. Thank
And
you
I just
for
enjoy
your
asking
boldness
this.
and sincerity. It is great. I want you to test everything that I say. And I want you to test everything that you hear from other teachers, writers, pundits, newscasters, and you name it that are out there, Christian and non-Christian alike. I believe it's Acts chapter 16, 17, 18. It's in the teens of Acts, where I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, and fact check me on this, test it, that Paul is leaving Thessalonica. And he's kind of fed up with them. They're not responding to him. And then he goes to the Bereans. And Luke, in writing the story, makes this comment that the Bereans were of noble character. They took what Paul said and tested it against the scriptures. Do not blindly accept what I'm saying or anyone else is ever saying. But do I believe that what I'm saying is true? Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't be on the show right now. Mm-hmm. Do I do do the best job I can of keeping myself in the Word, vetted, reading, and doing everything else and challenging my own assumptions? Yeah, I seek to, and I hope every pastor out there is seeking to. But test it. To say, is it just my opinion? Well, sometimes it's my opinion. And of course it's my opinion. But sometimes that opinion is based on what the Bible is actually saying or what Christian tradition is saying. But test that too. Don't take my word for it. Always test it. But hopefully I'll prove trustworthy, though not infallible, in the journey. And leave it at that. Yeah, thanks for asking.
I think that's something that gets either brought up a lot or get asked a lot of teachers and of pastors in general. Like, how do we know that you're just not just making this up? Like, I don't speak Greek or Hebrew.
Yeah.
You're saying that this is what this word means. Why am I supposed to believe you?
Yeah, and that's
just
point.
a great place to start, because first of all, there is a lot of education and knowledge and everything that you've gone through to get to that point. But now we have the internet. You can Google it yourself on 12 different websites if you want to go, oh, okay, this is what this means.
Ask other pastors. Ask pastors in your theological tradition, but test it against other theological traditions. Mm-hmm. There's wonderful books out there called commentaries, in which someone who's devoted their life to studying a book of the Bible will translate it and then write their comments about what it means. And there's thousands of these. Get a couple of them, and some of them are very accessible. And you're going to find a certain consensus starts to raise up. And if there is an outlying opinion, don't dismiss it out of hand, but test it and make them prove why they do it. By the way, I looked it up. It's Acts 17, verse 11.
Okay.
It says, "Now the Berean Jews were of more noble character than those in Thessalonica, for they received the message with great eagerness and examined the scripture every day to see if what Paul said was true." So it's twofold. They weren't just skeptics going, I'm not going to listen to what you say. They received the message with a hunger and eagerness because they wanted to learn, but they tested against the Bible. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for asking, and I'm glad you brought that one up, Andrew. That's fun, man. That made me smile. That's good.
Let's see. How much we've got?
I think we got about 5 minutes.
5 minutes
yeah,
left.
about 5 minutes.
Let me find a 5-minute question.
5 minutes and 31 or 27 seconds now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So we'll see where it takes us. We can do this.
How do we know when God's answer to our earnest prayers is no, wait, or yes? How do we discern that from God and from prayer?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And the short answer is you don't always know in the short term, but it's usually revealed in the long term. Obviously, if you're asking for something specific and it isn't materializing right away, you can be pretty certain that it's a not yet or a no. But sometimes we can ask for something right away. And God begins a process that we just don't see clearly yet. So it calls for patience. And one of the greatest maybe tools or techniques I've seen people use by which you can come to discern this is to keep a prayer journal. Just get some cheap old, spiral notebook, or, if you kind of like to jazz it up, get your moleskin, leather bound, But you know what? Just date it and maybe spend a few devotional minutes each day recording some of your prayers. Lord, here's what I'm praying about. Here's what I'm praying for. Here's what I'm asking for. Here's what I'm struggling with. And it simultaneously becomes a log. And then once a week, go back and read everything you wrote. And once a month, go back and review everything you wrote that month. And maybe every year, do a year thing. And pretty soon, you can just start an exercise of going back, and you're going to realize, wow, God really has been active and on the scene in my life in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. With no's, yeses, and not yets, often all being towards my good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can really start to see the big picture of God's story and God's plan specifically in your life.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's so hard to see. We can think of, God's story is this, thing that's gone on for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And, will continue to go on beyond me. But then how do you shrink that down to be something personal to you? And it's like, being able to look back 10 years ago and go, oh, okay, I was praying for this, or this is what I was going through, or this was the, headspace that I was in.
Right.
And
right.
how was that utilized over that last amount of time? And that's been extremely helpful for me, and I'm not even like I'm going to do this daily and write it down, but it's like every now and then, like, pull out a journal and, write down what's going on, write down your prayers.
And I'm so ADD with my prayer life that, man, I forgot what I prayed about this morning, let alone like 3 days ago. And some things God has just taken care of, and it's like, oh, that's not even an issue anymore. Mm-hmm. Like God just, this worked out, or this resolved itself, or I don't care as much anymore, and He's changed my heart.
Yeah. And that reminds me, a couple weeks ago, we had Bible study and sermons dealing with prayer. Mm-hmm. And I think both of them use the ACTS model. So adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication.
Yeah. Which means ask.
Yeah.
By the way, we need another S word that means ask, because no one knows what supplication
is. We've been trying to come
today.
up with one, and we can't figure it out. But I think Thanksgiving is a part that I miss a lot of the time. Mm. God, thanks for this. Thanks for, it's easy to go, thanks for my family, thanks for the things around me, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you can look back on your prayer life and go, okay, I was praying for this at that time, and hey, God, thanks for how you worked this out 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. Like, I think a lot of times we can, throw those prayers into the ether, and we never go back to them ourselves.
Yeah, because we're so just flurried in the moment or focused on the future.
I just want to ask for this or ask about this.
Yeah, you got to be retrospect, or
and being thankful for that when that finally does. Yeah. It either does happen or doesn't happen, or you can see what God's plan was in saying no or yes or wait to a prayer.
Right.
It's very cool. Very cool.
Well, great one to land the plane on here today. We are out of time. Thank you so much for listening today. Thank you so much for your questions. You can ask them 24/7. We are working through an inbox of questions here, but we also take them live. Text them anytime to 815-314-0363. Let me give that to you again. 815-314-0363. We go live every Wednesday afternoon, 12:30 p.m. Central Time. If you've missed past episodes, check them out. Go to fellowshipoffaith.org, check out the FOF Plus page, and you will find them there. Or better yet, go to your favorite podcast provider, search for questions you never thought you could ask in church. We will pop right up. Hey, God bless you guys. Thanks for asking, and we'll catch you next time. From here back to...
Oh, yeah.